barrel release pushes the safety back properly. It moves freely. When it's on safety, the triggers do not. They don't even wiggle. It's a very tight fit on that safety. Now, my hammers are not cocked. Well, I don't know if they are or not. No, they're not, because the firing pins are, I'm not sure about something here. I don't have any movement in these triggers. When the safety's back, the triggers don't move. But when the safety's turned off, the triggers ought to move a little bit. Unless the hammers have to be cocked to drop the triggers down. I'm going to take a chance on that. I don't want to get this thing in trying to cock the hammers and locked everything in and then can't get it apart for whatever reason. I'm going to put the barrel on. Those triggers got a lot of tension on them. I don't know why. I just can't quite figure that out right yet. Maybe it'll come to me in a little bit. Okay, here's what I was concerned about. These are hammers. This and this. Those are your hammers. And when you cock this thing, these guys come back to an kind of an overcocked position to where they catch well. Now, as it is right now, when they're cocked, this is further back than this. This is sticking out. Oh, it's only about a 1/16, but that's butting into the front of this wood, because this front of this wood is flat, all except for where I milled it out. It's just totally flat. So I've got to mill out a place for this. But the thing is, when you overcock this thing, watch what this hammer does. It extends further. See it? That thing extends out. When you break it all the way down, you can't get your shell out with it not cocked any more than that. So you overcock it, and when you do, that hammer comes back almost 1/8 of an inch. So I have to mill out. I've got to do a little bit more milling on the front of this thing. I've got to pull this thing down as far as I can and then measure that. It's got some spring action. It's not wanting to stay there. But that gave me a pretty good measurement. Actually, not quite big enough. That's a pretty good measurement right there. See, I've got 1/16, so 125 is 1/8. It's about 1/8 of an inch. And then I've got to mark a location as to where that thing comes out. I can do that. I got a pretty decent location. I couldn't hardly get the camera where I was. I was holding the outside of the action out here and marking where that hammer was. So I got a print, and it's about right there to down here. You can see the distance the hammer is from this outside edge. From the very outside to the hammer is probably 3/32. It's pretty close tolerance in there, really. It is it's almost 1/8, but this side's thicker than this side. I don't know why. You can I can see it. This is thinner than this. This side is not quite as thick. Yeah, it's about 20 thousandths thinner. But anyway, it comes in from the outside of this thing in about 1/10 on one side and about 1/8 on the other. Okay. The hammer's just cocked. Safety came on. Safety's off. But the triggers do not have any play, even with the safety off. Click, click. Snap. Tight. Safety off. Trigger 1. Trigger 2. Barrel lever safety on. Click, click. This has been one circus, but it's fitted. Need to trim all my wood down and shape it, but it's fitted, and it has been a wild one. It's a well-made piece. You just got to know the lick it's done with, and I did not know it coming into the game. I've got plenty to trim off. Top and bottom. I found out a little bit about this piece. Somebody had it across a gun rack on a four-wheeler and went between two trees that were not quite wide enough, and they broke it in a sideways manner, and I think that's why this is flared out just a teeny bit. There's a little tiny gap right between this and this. There's a little bitty gap, maybe 20 thousandths. I talked to the owner about it. He bought it broken. He bought it as is. So, and the trigger guard is it's bent, really bent. So I've got to get that back to the right shape to fit this contour. This is the same contour as the original, but the trigger guard is straight out, and so I've got to work on that, or have it worked on. So, woohoo! When it all came flying to pieces, it bent this. This was straight, pointed out like my finger is. It didn't have a curl to it. It had bent really severely right across the weak place, which is the screw opening. And it's also tipped. This needs to be tipped a little bit back that way, rotated, because when you screw it in, the trigger hits the inside of the trigger guard. So I've got to shift this whole trigger guard back. I've got to bend it right here to do that. So, and I don't think this requires the license of a gunsmith, so I don't mind putting this on YouTube. But when I get done bending, I had this kind of a dull red yesterday when I bent that curl back in there. But this will have to be re-blued, and then the owner said he could do the bluing on it. So I'll polish up all these little taps and dings I put in it, and get it. The engraving starts here to here. It's got a little bit of an engraved edge on it right here. So we won't mess with anything that's where the engraving is. But from here out, I can buff that down, and that can be re-blued. So I'm going to bend this thing right here and try to shift it back, and then I'm going to straighten out just a teeny bit and let this thing lay down. Just let that thing tuck in, because right now it's just not quite the right shape of the rest of the wood. And that'll change some when I shift this back, because this will scoot back into the wood. It's like everything else. It's a process. think that did what I need. So I polished the tip of this little anvil. This is a little jeweler's anvil I picked up at a yard sale. And I polished that and slicked it up pretty good so I wouldn't scar the inside of that any more than I had to. I may have to uncurl that just a little bit. It might be slightly too tight, but we'll see in a minute when it cools off. Okay, that gave me clearance here on this back trigger. Even when this is inserted and goes down a touch, it won't go down but about maybe a 30-second right there, but that gives me clearance on my back trigger, which is probably close to the original dimensions of it. It looks like it bent this out of center. It looks like it's got a little bit of a wowie, but I think I can heat that right there and twist that back around. I think it's pretty close actually, but bending that right there did the trick to give me clearance, and then I reshaped this right here to I think whenever I relieve all this, that this will go in with that screw pulling it in. I think it'll probably lay down